don't support Russia. Russia has taken aggressive action against the Ukraine. They've no right to be there. The Ukrainian people have the right to their national sovereignty and freedom of expression and to create a society that they want. What Russia needs to do now, to be clear, is cease fire and get out of the Ukraine and allow the Ukrainian people to have their national sovereignty. That's the position of my union. It's my position personally.
We've heard a lot of these arguments before. Has anything actually changed over the last couple of weeks, and how close are we to a settlement?
Well, the changes that we've had is that we've been in constant discussion more or less with the companies. We've been in this week and we'll be back next week, but we haven't bridged the differences between us. There are still some major problems in terms of what they want to do to the industry, which is to change it radically and change our people's working lives. We haven't got a pay deal. We haven't got a guarantee of job security. And the train operating companies want to make massive detrimental changes to our pensions, but we're still in there having that dialogue. But what I think we have got, the change that we've seen, is a ramping up of the rhetoric, an almost rabid attack on railway workers and their unions by Grant Shapps, who seems to be having to prepare himself for a change of leadership in the Tory party by making out that he's some kind of Schwarzenegger character in regard to industrial relations in this country. And at the weekend he threatened to make us all redundant, issue Section 188 letters. But that follows on, I think 6 weeks ago he said he was going to ban all overtime on the railway, and that's not worked out very well for him because people have stopped working some overtime and the railway has ground to a halt on many occasions. So we've got a person who doesn't understand the job he's got in front of him, and as well as that, he's blocking a deal. So he needs to get out of the way or change his stance, and then we could probably work towards a deal very quickly.
So do you feel the people who are in the room with you, you can do business with? How far off are we? Let's talk about the financial settlement. They offered 4% over 2 years, which is characterised by some as 8%, therefore. How far are you from a pay deal? What do you want? What are you saying to them? That, inflation is 10% and is rising. Are you saying it's got to match inflation?
Well, what we're saying first is we need job security. We need to work out how many people are going to work in this industry, how many people they want to get rid of, and then how they want our people to be deployed. And that's really important. Many of our members tell us on our online meetings, and we meet them, that before we get round to pay, we've got to sort out who's got a job. You don't get a pay rise if you haven't got a job. If you're on the dole, you won't get anything. The offer that Network Rail have made, and the train operators have made no offer, is 8% over 3 years, because we didn't get a pay deal last year off Network Rail. Inflation today on the retail price index is 12.3%. Now, we've not got a fixed figure in mind, but certainly if I settled on the 4% for next year, that's probably going to be a quarter of the rate of inflation. And that would lock in our members getting poorer against prices. And everybody knows the issues about energy bills and the general inflation rate. So we've got some big issues we've got to face. But at the heart of this is the £4 billion of cuts that Shapps has imposed on London Underground and the mainline railway. And that's where the problem is derived from. But it's also this macho stance that he's trying to puff himself up for. And I think we've got to end that and start doing some serious negotiating in a spirit of goodwill, looking for a settlement. Those managers that I speak to, senior executives, and there's one of them had the decency to come down and see us on the picket line this morning and shake hands. So we've got a relationship with them that could get a deal, but they're being wound up and hampered by the political situation in this country at the minute, and that's not good enough.
You talk about job security.
Everyone wants a settlement. The passengers want a settlement, and so do we.
You talk about job security. Are you saying, therefore, that in your industry there should be no compulsory redundancy? Your industry should be above and beyond that because there are economic forces affecting everyone's industry, and often that leads to redundancy for all sorts of people in all sorts of jobs. Can you reasonably say for your industry, no, there will never be compulsory redundancy in our industry, we can fight against that?
Absolutely. A claim for no compulsory redundancies is a standard trade union issue. The companies are saying that they will be able to provide that to us if we agree to the changes that they want to make. We understand their modernisation agenda, as they call it, and we will work with them on that. We've been dealing with change for centuries, since Stephenson's rocket. We're not riding around on steam trains. We've got all sorts of digital techniques and technology in our industry. We'll deal with that. We don't want imposed change, and we don't want compulsory redundancies. There's a way through that that provides job security and provides a decent set of terms and conditions. What we're not prepared to do is have a race to the bottom where everything that our members benefit from is ripped up We can do that if the government allows a settlement to mature through negotiations, and then we can call off these strikes and get back to working normally on the railway.
Do you, and will that happen? I mean, let's talk about this. Do you worry that the repeated strikes become part of the sort of low-grade misery experienced by all of us, and they start to lose their sting a bit? People get used to working from home. If they can, they get used to not taking the train. They change their plans. They move things around. And actually, you standing on a picket line starts to have less of an impact because it almost becomes part of the wallpaper of living in Britain in 2022.
Well, part of the wallpaper of living in Britain in 2022 is millions of people getting poorer every day of the week, while profits are at an all-time high, including on the railway, where £500 million of profit was taken out of our system last year. So we need to redress that balance, and millions of workers are coming to that call. We're seeing many workers being called into action at the moment. So we don't want low-grade poverty. This is the situation that has been created by this government, where workers get no respect in the workplace, and their conditions are being degraded. And I think society's being degraded at the minute as well by the way that the country's being run. We're part of the solution to that. We want a transport system that offers cheap, affordable, comfortable and safe travel that's part of an integrated transport policy that's good for the public, good for the workers working on the system, and good for the environment. So we need a proper transport policy over the long term that's going to deliver for the public and deliver for our economy, as well as our climate change and carbon emissions that we need.
Do you think that there will be a coming together of all different types of workers? How far away from a general strike are we? Would you back that? Is there do you think there needs to be a moment of collective action? Do you think that's plausible, possible, and will it happen?
Well, I've been addressing meetings this week with thousands of people in attendance, and they're an enormous movement now for workers to be able to stand up for themselves. And some workers are getting very good settlements at the moment through taking industrial action or using ballots. We've got the Post Office, British Telecom, we've got bus workers on strike in London this weekend. There is a movement for change. People don't want to put up with the stuff that they've been forced to accept over the last decade. I don't know if there'll be a general strike in the traditional term, but there certainly will be a wave of solidarity. There'll be a wave of synchronised action between the trade unions, people supporting each other. But we also need community action, because people's working class communities and other communities are being degraded. Services are being cut. Libraries and hospitals and swimming pools, children's services, care services are all being cut in the name of austerity and profit. And this government and any other politician have got to face up to that. If they can't do it, then the trade unions and community activists will have to do it for them and bring about change in our society. But what we've got to do, and my job mainly, is to get a settlement to this dispute for our people. And if we can be part of a movement where all working people move forward, we'll be very glad to support others.
You've become a very big media figure this summer, Mick Lynch. You've spoken about equality and cost of living. You talk about how you're trying to get something for your members. That's your priority. You've also spoken in an interview about things like Ukraine. You've said the EU provoked a lot of trouble in Ukraine. You said lots of people there were playing with Nazi imagery. These are lines used by Russia to justify their invasion. Actually, they follow that type of rhetoric. Do you stand by them, or do you wish you'd actually stuck to the day job, which you're doing pretty well, of industrial relations?
Well, my day job is industrial relations. That's what I do. I mean, there's always a context to a conversation. We don't support Russia. Russia has taken aggressive action against the Ukraine. They've no right to be there. The Ukrainian people have the right to their national sovereignty and freedom of expression and to create a society that they want. What Russia needs to do now, to be clear, is cease fire and get out of the Ukraine and allow the Ukrainian people to have their national sovereignty. That's the position of my union. It's my position personally. That's all I've got to say about that. Russia is in the wrong, and they need to get out.
But did you regret saying the EU have provoked a lot of trouble in Ukraine? You did say that's a direct quote. Was that misrepresented, or is that what you thought as well?
Well, it's not a direct quote. It's a selected quote out of a bigger conversation. Our stance on Russia is absolutely clear. They need to get out of the Ukraine and allow the Ukrainian people to live freely and stop their unwarranted aggression. There's no excuse for what they've done, and we condemn it alongside every right-thinking person.